First game ready.
Sim. Warga plus 62 emang banyak maunya. Dari drakoran sampai banjir air mata. Nonton action yang mantul. Sampai nonton tendangan cantik. Maksudnya ini. Mau nonton apapun, semua ada di video. Mulai dari yang bikin berbunga-bunga, keringet dingin, ketawa, sampai bikin gak ngedip. Jadi nonton apa sekarang?
pernah ku berhenti, tak pernah ku menyerah.
Untuk raih peluang, untuk ambil keputusan.
Bisnis Indonesia, navigasi bisnisku. Bisnis Indonesia.
Bisnis Indonesia, navigasi bisnis terpercaya.
Perkenalkan, ini aplikasi terbaru kompas.com. Kamu bisa baca berita lebih nyaman. Buka aplikasinya, scroll, swipe, klik, dan baca berita yang kamu mau. Yang paling penting, iklannya lebih tertata dan tidak mengganggu. Semua topik favorit kamu ada di sini. Berita hari ini semua ada di ujung jari. Download sekarang, baca berita lebih nyaman.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 6th installment of SEACA Talks webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about the growth in the esports in SCA. My name is Andra, and I'm going to be your host for today. Talks is a part of UniPin Southeast Asia Cyber Arena 2022, also known as SEACA 2022. It is the largest esports tournament in Southeast Asia, inaugurated in 2018 by UniPin. This year's SEACA Major 2022 will bring an exciting series of events starting from the 15th until 29th of November 2022. UniPin SEACA Major 2022 is brought to you thanks to the support from our sponsors, OSIM, Inspiring Wellbeing, Odyssey, the Samsung gaming monitor, our official streaming partner Video, and also the assistant from the Artist Valley and media partners. Today we're going to talk about the growth of the esports industry in C. So we're going to have two very excellent speakers. They know their stuff about C esports. Without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker, the CEO of Anantarupa, Mr. Ivan Chen. Okay, what is up, Mr. Ivan? Good afternoon. How's your day?
Good afternoon. It's great.
Okay, so before we start, let me introduce you to our second speaker, the country manager for UniPin Philippines, Mr. DC Dominguez. Good afternoon, Mr. DC. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let me start with like a brief introduction about you guys, right? So Mr. DC, as you know, is the country manager for UniPin Philippines. UniPin is the company that runs this webinar, so you guys should be familiar with that. And Mr. Ivan Chen is the CEO of Anantarupa. Anantarupa is I think you all know Lokapala, the first Indonesian MOBA, and Anantarupa is the game developer for Lokapala. So we're glad to have you guys today. So today, to start our webinar, to start our talk show, let me ask you guys like a really general question. Like, I think you guys are very tired talking about this, but we just got landed a pandemic about So the esports environment, the esports industry changed a lot during that time, right? So can you guys talk about your experiences in the esports industry and how it is before the pandemic, and how it changed after the pandemic? Mr. Ivan, maybe.
Okay, as far as I remember, we decided to create or develop esports team games. That was in 2017. So before pandemic. Why? Because we see a lot of directions that esports is going to be on mobile sooner or later. So as we can see in business, every trend will be like the cycle is every 10 years, 10 or 20 years. It depends on how are you looking at it. So if you want to have a good positioning in the next iterations of business, then we need to be calculated well when it's going to be big hit. And in 2018 and 19, esports is going up, and the event for mobile esports is going very well. And then there comes pandemic, and all we know that games and esports is growing very, very, very fast during the pandemic. And now I think some people say that it's going to be slower, but I think it's just almost reached equilibrium where everything is going to be stable soon, and we can see all the content industry is going to be stable soon. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So how about you, Mr. DC? How do you think esports has changed before and after the pandemic?
Okay, so let's start, I guess, with before. Especially here in the Philippines, esports has been growing at a tremendous rate. If you look at probably maybe the last 5 or 6 years, you had numerous esports organizations and teams popping up left and right. You had all of these events and tournaments happening on ground. In the Philippines, it was actually almost at like a monthly basis. There was always this big esports event, both for professional and grassroots. But I think a lot of the major breakthroughs when it comes to the esports industry, there's about maybe 5 or 6 that I really go to. So the first 2 would be the availability of the content. So esports was primarily a desktop experience. So there were some problems reaching those people who didn't necessarily have PCs at home back then. So being able to watch esports on TV, both from pay TV and local free TV, was really, really good, especially here in the Philippines. So that was introduced a while back. And also you have to take a look at cheaper options being made available for broadband internet and mobile data, and the introduction of live streaming platforms to mobile. So that pretty much also increased the audience viewing esports. Next, within Southeast Asia, there was I guess an introduction of a lot of big international esports events. In Manila, there's 2 that come to mind. The first one being ESL1 Manila. So that was I believe the first arena event that we had international teams for Dota 2 come fly in and participate, which was really good for the local community. And then the second one was when Manila was chosen as a Dota 2 major. So that was the Manila Major. And then after that, it was really more supported by the growth of grassroots, and primarily that was centered on collegiate esports organizations really growing through different programs in school. Now these collegiate organizations are quite large, and it's hard to find college and university without one. They even have programs like scholarship, and then even in some colleges they have their own esports curriculums. One of the biggest, though, I think, in terms of really growing the industry was the growth of local gaming influencers. So especially with the introduction of platforms like Facebook Gaming, it was really easy for local communities to sort of rally behind these content creators, build communities with them, and also these influencers themselves. They were also part of the esports industry because some of them started off as esports athletes. Some of them eventually invested into esports organizations and teams themselves. So yeah, and I guess the last would be I guess across the board in the region, stronger government support. Like in the Philippines, I think around 2017, the Games and Amusement Board of the Philippines recognized esports as an official sport, and that further paved the way for professionalization in esports. So the pandemic, I guess, kind of, it didn't really stop the growth of esports. I think in some ways, in some manners, it actually increased. Esports broadcast has proven to be pandemic proof. It was one of the few pieces of content that essentially had an easy transition, because pretty much it was already the broadcast norm to be streaming. So.
Okay, so I want to follow up to Mr. Ivan. You said you started planning for Lokapala at least before the pandemic, right? So, and as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Lokapala released May of 2020, right? So that's like early pandemic. Do you think releasing during the pandemic or the early stages of pandemic is a gift or a curse for you?
I think it's both, because first, we have difficulties at some technical issues back then, so we need to test it, and because it's pandemic, we don't have any solutions to test the infrastructure unless we release it in public. So I think in May 2022, in May 2020. We just released it in public to understand more about the nature of multiplayer games, because we are the only developer in Southeast Asia who develop multiplayer games. And the difficulty is quite high, and we don't even have a mentor to know all the problems. So yes, it's both. It's both. So after we release, we have a lot of problem in infrastructure, and then it make us understand better and iterate faster than trying to figure out the whole cycle by ourselves.
Okay, so esports is a really growing industry right now. It's growing it's also growing in all parts of the world. I also understand that Mr. Ivan said that esports is going on mobile, but again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the trend I see is going really popular for mobile in SEA countries, but not so much in Americas or Europe's. I mean, it's growing, but it's not growing as fast as SEA. So do you think esports as a whole is going to go to mobile, or is it just going to be SEA?
I think when we say that esports is going to mobile, it doesn't mean that the PC games will diminish anytime soon, because it is just open new opportunity for mobile gamers to compete in esports, because they don't have to invest in very expensive hardware. It means it creates accessibility to the market, and it's growing, right? It's growing, and we can see the big titles like League of Legends also aiming for the mobile market as well. And we are going to see the market in future will be saturated. It's not saturated, but reach equilibrium, where both esports on PC platform, on mobile platform will reach its stable state.
Okay, so Mr. DC, I'm sorry, I quite leave you hanging there a bit. So
No worries.
I'm going to ask you about, as we all know, UniPin is like one of the detrimental parts of SEA Esports, right? UniPin is like one of the companies that supports SEA Esports. So I'm guessing like you handle esports personalities, esports events a lot, and you come in contact with quite a lot of problems, or at least interesting moments during like those events. Can you have any insight on how, as like a talent, or how maybe just as someone in general, how can you enter the esports scene as someone who's passionate, I guess?
Right. I get asked this a lot. Basically from people that I've worked with, to friends and family. Really, at the end of the day, it really depends on how you want to enter the scene, right? So there are multiple entry points. If you want to come in as a player, then essentially a lot of what you have to bring with you is skill and being able to really establish yourself as a brand. If you're coming in as a professional, there are also multiple avenues for you to take a look at. You can come in, say, for example, from the event space. You can come in from an esports organizational perspective. So compared to like maybe 5-10 years back, there's definitely a lot more options to take a look at when coming into esports and finding a career in esports. Me personally, I never really expected to fall into games and esports because primarily by profession, I'm a marketing professional. And I was working in agencies and I was working in TV. It was really, luck of the draw that I eventually ended up where I am today. It primarily just started with what I mentioned earlier with ESL1, because at the time I was working in TV and our company basically decided to pivot and add esports to some of the sports content offerings that we were looking at. So that was before when options were few, but now there's so many different ways to come in. There are so many different esports services startups that people are putting up, and there's so many different hustles that are happening around esports and gaming as well. I mean, if you're a player, you don't even need to necessarily come in as an esports athlete to make money. You can make money as a coach on the side, just really, sharpening players through the game. So there's tons of options available.
Okay, so we heard about how to infiltrate the scene as talent from Mr. DC. So, Mr. Ivan, I understand that you made the first Indonesian MOBA, and MOBAs are inherently competitive. So I'm sure you already planned out how you want to go as an esport for your game. So how did you plan out your infiltration in plans for the future?
Okay, so when we're talking about the esports, then we're talking about the whole ecosystem. And I agree with Mr. DC that we need to understand esports more about this the ecosystem that we are trying to build, rather than only a product or just only a game, like regular games. That's the beauty of esports, I think. It opens so much opportunity for every collaborators to jump in. And that's what we are going to do in Southeast Asia. So we are testing a closed beta server for Southeast Asia soon. I think the next month, and we already talked to several partners in its country in Southeast Asia region to execute local pala scene in Southeast Asia. So I would like to add that the scheme might be a little bit different from each country, because it depends. We want to work together with the local partners, so we have to understand how the ecosystem in each country develop, and our strategy is to help them to achieve the optimized business for them as well.
Okay, so I heard both of you guys say that esports is growing. Esports is a growing industry that's taking the world by storm, I guess, is how I would recap that. So where do you guys see esports 5 years from now? Do you think it's going to be a part of mainstream media, or do you think it's going to be bigger than mainstream media now? Or do you think everyone's going to know about every esports, or how do you see it? We can start with Mr. DC.
Sure. Well, when it comes to games and esports, they've been posting year-on-year growth even through the pandemic, which is very interesting. I guess as long as people keep playing games, esports is always going to be moving forward. But I think what really pushes us toward the future is going to be how new technologies are really going to be shaping the way that we play games moving forward. So Ivan is nodding his head. He knows about this very much. I came from telco, so one of the biggest things that I'm looking at right now in terms of the future of games and esports is how 5G affects the way we play games moving forward, right? Because 5G unlocks so many different technologies. You're talking about big data, AI, cloud gaming, VR, all of that is pretty much on the cusp right now, and all in development. Not to mention Web3. I cannot forget about Web3, of course. But all of these technologies are pretty much just ripe. It's only a matter of time for a new breakthrough game to really change the landscape again, right? If you take a look at a couple of years back, Dota 2 started essentially as a mod for Warcraft 3. And now it's one of the biggest category for games in the world. It's a game such as Dota, League of Legends, Mobile Legends. These are what we call generational games, right? They exist as the leaders within a particular time period, but I mean, who knows what's going to be available in the next 5 years?
Okay, so I guess I'm going to ask the same question to you, Mr. Ivan, but a little bit more spice. I want to ask you where you see esports in the next 5 years and where you see Lokapala in the next 5 years.
Okay, so esports in 5 years. First, you asking, is it going to be bigger than conventional media? I'll answer yes, but it's not necessarily because it's better, but it completes the media, because conventional media usually is a one-way media, like there's an audience and a broadcaster, but esports because first it revolving around the game is like two-way media, so the audience can interact with other audience and also with the game itself. Then it creates a lot of opportunity, and the nature of esports is quite broaden the business models, and with technology like 5G that Mr. DC already stated, it will change the way we as a person handle the virtual worlds or the digital worlds, because esports will not only becoming like entertainment, but it will be part of our life. Like for example, in school there will be like extra curriculum, and we are going to need more content. Means the content industry is has a similar pattern. All the businesses, we can see the patterns. Once the battle of the platform, and then after the battle of the platform almost reach the end, then they are going to be the battle of the content itself. And for me, I'd like to add that Lokapala is already prepared to serve all this demand in future, because we can see Lokapala is not only a game, but we are going to develop the IP. We are going to work with different stakeholders in order for us to grow together with them. So I think it will be in 5 years, it will be very interesting that we are not going to discuss about disruptions anymore, but how can we collaborate and enrich each other in order to have more sustainable business models.
Okay, so I heard Mr. DC talk about how Dota and League of Legends, they are like games that are generational games. So, but the truth about the industry is some games just outright die sometimes, or some games lose player bases and their communities are just not there anymore. So what I want to ask is, what are things to consider if you want to jump into the industry? Like, what mentalities you should have? Should you like jump ship when the community starts going bad, or do you think you should stick with the game even if it's having ups and downs? How do you think about that, Mr. DC?
With any industry, at the end of the day, it experiences, numerous ups and downs. We've seen so many games come and go, but we've also seen some games that, have pulled themselves essentially from the brink of doom, right? And a lot of these games are thriving right now. Really, I guess the kind of mentality that you should be bringing if you want to, work and succeed in the gaming industry is being very future facing. So whatever happens to you now is really just a symptom of the decisions that you made before. And at the end of it, for you to be able to get yourself out of that situation is to be 3 or 5 steps ahead of your competition all the time, and that's something that is sometimes harder to do, especially with smaller organizations. But really, if you have a vision and you really feel that it is next gen and it's something that's really going to bring you a lot of success, there are definitely going to be points inside of your business that are going to give you those signals, right? And the easiest way to find those signals is really talk to your community. The end all and be all is communication with your community when it comes to games, and community is very important in all aspects of it. So.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to ask the same question to Mr. Ivan, but from like a game dev standpoint, what do you think a mentalities game devs should have if they want to be the next big esports, they want to be the next big thing? How do they plan ahead? How do they plan to make, like, how do they infiltrate the scene, I guess?
So as we know now that most of the esports scheme, the games are from China mainly, but I believe in future esports game might need more contents, especially from the region. So for me, I will encourage the game developers in Southeast Asia. I met them just a couple of days. Because we are exhibiting in a G-Star, and I met game developers from Thailand, from Philippines, from Brunei, from Malaysia, and we all agree that we need to have more collaborations in future in order to create more esports title where we can moderating the esports ecosystem. And one of the most important note that in the content industry, game is quite unique as the nature that game is as a living product means it evolves over time. And I heard that you say about the game is failed and cannot have the community anymore. Well, this is true only if the developer doesn't develop it to the target market. Because, for example, if we look at Crossfire, it was failed by then. But if we in 2016, it failed in Southeast Asia, and I don't think we can find players. So even in Indonesia, we call it like a dead game. But we know that Smile Gates have revenue from Crossfire is $12 billion by last year. $12 billion only on Crossfire, and we call it dead game. So I think as long as the the developer has a passion to continue to evolve their products to serve around the ecosystem and community that's supporting it, they are going to be fine.
Okay, so I heard a lot of talk about community, and I also heard Mr. DC mention that Dota started from a Warcraft mod, which is like a mod made by the community of Warcraft to make like a new game. So, how do you guys think? How big of an impact do you guys think communities have in esports scenes? And I guess how you, Mr. Ivan, are trying to like engage to the community and trying to keep them stay to play your game or stay to be at least like a part of the community.
This is very interesting questions. This is why esports is very intriguing for me as well, because for each community they also need something to grow. For example, for some game in esports, they kind of limiting the team, the esports team to grow at some point, because at some level they have to pay a quite big amount of money to enter the competitions, and this creates opportunity for us, for example, for Lokapala, to create another positioning for them. So the key is to create a lot of opportunity for the community to grow, and they can thrive in. They can have a great career or business by jumping in every opportunity that we create for them. Then I think it is not only like one way, but we can interact and then enrich each other. And when we can serve the community, I believe that the game itself will stay growing in the market. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess as the country manager for UniPin Philippines, Mr. DC, I'm guessing you have opinions on these too. Like, how big of an impact do you think communities actually hold in esports? Do you think like esports is like 80% community, 20% like how good a game is, or the esports scene, or yeah, I guess I'm just asking how much of an impact do you think community has?
Well, I can't really put a number to it, but I mean, really, if you take a look at it, community is a backbone of any civilization. Period. Right? And esports is really just one aspect of that. At the end of the day, we should basically be taking a look at community as a mirror to ourselves, and being able to find ways to improve. That's something that can only be done with a community. Improving your systems, developing new communication strategies, devising and optimizing easier ways for labor, developing culture, all of that starts from community. And I guess in terms of importance, community is very important. Really hard to try to put a number to it, but it is definitely one of the backbones to where we are today.
Okay, so I understand that you guys think that community is important, but community in itself is divided, right? It's not really like something that's always positive or like always negative. It's always like a mixed batch of things. So as a game developer, Mr. Ivan, how do you like handle negative community impacts or like negative community feedbacks, I guess is what I'm saying. And how do you actually like take account community feedbacks for your game?
It is very interesting because we have so many feedback back then, and I think the feedback mostly similar with Riot in 2010 when they first released League of Legends, right? Everyone said that back then, League of Legends copying Dota, and then they must make something similar to Dota and this and that, but the rest is history. I think because if we see the player base and the revenue, League of Legends double what Dota can achieve actually, and this is due to understanding the community that they are going to hit. For me, an input, not necessarily a negative input, as long as it is constructive. But if the person who suggested doesn't understand what they are saying, then we don't need to listen. As simple as that. Why? Because it means that they are not our market. It is similar to toxicity that we know that some developers like Riot and other developers is fighting against right now. It is losing toxic players. I think it's a positive will create a positive impact in the industry and also in the community as well, because we only allow a positive person to be in our community, and I think that's the key in order to establish a good environment for the business.
Okay, so far we've almost mostly been talking about the industry standpoint of esports, but as like something commercial, we have not really been able to like have coverage, like good players and like good games. Like we just recently had like good SEA teams in Dota and Valorant, but it hasn't like always been the case. Do you think what do you think contributes to that factor? Why is it different then from now? Why are the names of SEA teams rising in the recent years? And why haven't it always been that way, Mr. DC?
Okay. I like this question very much. So one of the reasons why competitive skill difference is the way it is because of exposure, right? So previously, back then, it was really hard for local teams to find higher skilled talent. Basically, they would be competing in their own lobbies, and they would probably be the best in theirs. But it was only through international competition that they really found out who the good players really were. As we go through, improvements in technology, as we go through essentially more and more tournaments being developed, local teams get to experience basically different styles of play that are happening across the world. Like my favorite example of this was Tekken. So Tekken was primarily a Korean and Japanese dominated esport. But all of a sudden, a couple of years back, a world champion emerged from Pakistan. And that was Arslan Nash, and nobody knew who he was. And when he came onto the scene, it was basically a giant gong ringing that Pakistan Tekken was world class. And the only reason that nobody knew about it was because Pakistani players didn't have the opportunity to fly and join all of these world championship tournaments. But now, a couple of years later, I believe there are more Pakistani players playing in Tekken. Like I think the last Evo, I can't remember his name, but Ni won Tekken World Championships in Evo. But the second was another Pakistani player. And really, at the end of the day, it's finding all of these groups and clusters of players and being able to play with them will eventually also evolve your play. There's so many different styles of play that are evolving in all of our circles. We just need to find them if we really want to improve.
Okay. I understand you're a Tekken and Evo fan too, so you can see I was really happy when you brought up Arslan Nash because I'm really familiar with that scene too. Okay, so I guess this is going to be the last question for you guys today because we're nearing our end time. I guess I would just like closing remarks from you guys, like things that you would want to say to someone that's currently like struggling to infiltrate the esports scene or still like in school dreaming about a career in esports. Like, what do you recommend them to start with? What do you recommend them to do? Maybe if they don't want to be a player, what other career options there are to like help the community in SEA grow? We can start with Mr. Ivan.
Okay, for me, it is very important to understand the ecosystem of esports. Like, we need a lot of like streamers, casters, and we always in Indonesia currently when we held the tournament, we always want to have a caster hunt, and actually the opportunity for this kind of a career to grow is quite quite big. Why? Because we need to grow the community for it's a small region other than the capital, because right now the esports scheme needs to be decentralized from what we have right now, and it needs to be, it's not regulated but structured very well, so every bit of the community can fit into the ecosystem, starting from the smaller city and the larger region as well. But we do really need to make it more decentralized ecosystem. I think that's it for me.
Okay, the same question for you, Mr. DC. How do you think someone with passion for the scene can get into it? I guess maybe they think they're not mechanically inclined to be a pro player. Do you think there are other avenues that they can start working on to be a part of the growth of esports in SEA?
I guess to answer, to help with growth in esports and games in Southeast Asia, the first thing I would probably tell people would be, support your game devs, right? Don't buy pirated games. Always buy from legitimate sources. And if you like a game, support it as much as you can. That's always number one. That's the only way we can root out bad actors in our industry. The second is go to as many esports events as you can, not just to enjoy, but also to network, right? It is the best way to meet the people that you eventually want to work with. And most people in esports are super friendly. They always have some good advice for you. I guess the third thing would be that I would tell people is, get good. It is what it is. And not just from a gameplay perspective, right? Get good in all aspects, right? If you want to work in esports, make sure that you bring something to the table. It is a very competitive industry, and if you just come in with passion, it's not going to be enough, because everybody comes into esports with passion. So you got to back it up with skill.
Okay, so I guess that's all for today. Before we close this webinar, before we close this talk show, I guess we can have a picture of three of us together. I think the broadcast team is going to count us down. Okay, I guess the picture was taken, and thank you, Mr. Ivan and Mr. DC, for coming and talking about the growth of esports in SEA. I really enjoyed talking to you guys, and I'm sure everybody that was watching, that is still watching right now, enjoyed your insights and inputs. And maybe it sparked new esports enthusiasts. Thank you for joining, and I guess that will be all. Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you very much. Good
Thank you
afternoon,
very
everyone.
much. Good afternoon. It's nice to meet you, Mr. DC and Andra. Have a great weekend.
Have a
Thanks,
great
sis.
weekend, everyone.
New skin ready.
OSIM. Warga plus 62 emang banyak maunya. Dari drakoran sampai banjir air mata. Nonton action yang mantul. Sampai nonton tendangan cantik. Maksudnya ini, mau nonton apapun, semua ada di video. Mulai dari yang bikin berbunga-bunga, keringet dingin, ketawa, sampai bikin gak ngedip. Jadi nonton apa sekarang?
pernah ku berhenti, tak pernah ku menyerah.
Untuk raih peluang, untuk ambil keputusan.
Bisnis Indonesia, navigasi bisnisku. Bisnis Indonesia.
Bisnis Indonesia, navigasi bisnis terpercaya.
Perkenalkan, ini aplikasi terbaru kompas.com. Kamu bisa baca berita lebih nyaman. Buka aplikasinya, scroll, swipe, klik, dan baca berita yang kamu mau. Yang paling penting, iklannya lebih tertata dan tidak mengganggu. Semua topik favorit kamu ada di sini. Berita hari ini semua ada di ujung jari. Download sekarang, baca berita lebih nyaman.